Welcome to Season 2 of Let's Break Up, Toxic Workplace Stories. Join hosts Nicola and Gina as they tackle workplace toxicity head-on. Real-life stories, well-being, and standing against toxicity await you. Let's break up with toxic workplaces and create a revolution of positivity together.
As a disclaimer, Nicola and Gina's opinions are solely their own and don't represent professional advice. It's just their perspective, so form your own conclusions. Heads up, this podcast may contain adult content and explicit language. So let's dive in and break up with toxic workplaces.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Good morning,
Hi.
Amy. How are you?
Oh, yeah, it's nice to see you.
Lovely.
It's nice to see you, not in a snowy West Virginia desolate landscape.
Frightening.
I'm glad to see you're actually alive.
Oh, yes, thank you. I did make it. It was kind of a deliverance kind of situation when I last spoke to you, but I did make it.
That's good.
Do you want me to put on a cool colored background? Am I okay where I am? Okay.
Yeah, you do you, Boo. You're welcome to have a cool color background. We've got a spare one if you want.
Okay.
You don't have to.
You don't have to though. We're all good.
Okay, good.
Oh, so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I need to put on my privacy. Do not disturb. Okay. Let's see. I've been listening to a couple of your shows. I want to work for Air New Zealand. I think I need to. Who has a well-being department? That sounds really
Right?
Pretty much everybody in New Zealand.
And that's not where you're calling in from. Is it you're stateside now?
Who, me? I'm in New Zealand.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. No, and I'm here in
Why
the
is this
United States. Yeah, Gareth's job sound like, I think you heard me say, I was like, we don't even have anything like that. It's like maybe HR sort of, but it's like not like we don't have anything like health and safety like that in America at all. And it's like, it's really fucked up.
Well, there's third-party software now that HR people can buy. Ariana Huffington famously has one. I think it's called Thrive Global.
Oh, yes.
And as a company to work for, it's supposed to be completely miserable and completely like out of whack and miserable. But it sells stuff like, meditation courses that you can get through your company.
But I don't think that's what like Air New Zealand is doing. Like they're learning who their employees are. They're sitting, they're listening. It's not a fucking software program. Like the second you said software program, I'm like, I'm out. So Amy, why don't you formally introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you're up to, why you decided to come on the podcast, and we will then go from there.
Okay. My name is Amy Find Reeves, and I am 10 years into my second entrepreneurial venture. This one is solo. My first one was not solo. And I am the sole proprietor of Job Coach Amy, which is a coaching organization where I help career seekers at all levels find and keep jobs that they love. And my first love is really helping kids or students, new or recent grads, find jobs. And I have written a book in the last year for my first love, which is called College to Career Explained: Tools, Skills, and Confidence for Your Job Search, available everywhere. And that is a step-by-step guide to help people figure out what it is that they like doing, what jobs there are where they can do that, and then go through the process of structuring a job search and developing the tools they need: cover letter, resume, elevator pitch, how the process works from the other side, because I was a hiring manager for 2+ decades, and how to get references, all that kind of good stuff, all the nuts and bolts of it. And the reason why that is a passion for me is that I was a complete failure at it when I first got out of school. And I went to a good school. I had a good GPA. I had really cute skirt suits, and I could barely get an interview. And I spent a year as and the job I wanted, because it was the 80s. I'm very old. I should have prefaced with that. I wanted to go to a Wall Street bank training program, and there was many of them in those days. And I could barely get an interview. So I worked as an admin for a year because I could type 90 words a minute, which was a big deal back then. And I spent the year teaching myself how to interview and teaching myself what you actually did on those jobs. And the next year, first time out of the gate, I got an interview. I got the job. Turns out I was really good at it. I really liked it. And I thought, oh my God, what was the difference from the year before when nobody would interview me? And the answer was there was all these things that nobody ever taught me, and there was no resource for me. So from that point forward in my career, which I went on to be significant and I really loved, and I got to do a lot of really fun things. I had a solid career, got to do a lot of fun things, had a great career as a global management consultant, became a corporate executive, nonprofit executive, built and sold a company with 2 partners. And I always was the person in the office who was, when people came in and were like, oh my God, my nephew wants to get into this business, or, my neighbor, I'd be the one who said, oh, I'll help him, because I just really enjoyed it. And I also had to make a difficult career shift when I found myself in my early 40s. My husband left me for his college girlfriend, and left me with my 2-year-old, and a career that I was traveling all the time. I was the main breadwinner, and I suddenly couldn't be a consultant anymore, but because I needed to be home. But I knew how to run a consulting firm. So I ran 3 offices of a contract research organization, pharmaceutical firm, which was, by the way, an industry I'd never been in before. So I learned how to do that as well. And again, I didn't really find there were any resources to help me. So I became the resource that I knew I needed to be. And so I fast forward many years, and my second husband said, what is it you really want to do? And I said, this has been sort of my dream. So I've been doing it ever since. And I just love it. It feels like a great gift to be able to do it. And at the same time, I have had many, many, many ups and downs in my own career. I've been in a place where, I was the golden girl and got promoted ahead of everybody else. I have been fired. I have been in many, many toxic situations, and I've kind of seen it all, which, as it turns out, is great for everything that I am able to share with my clients now. So who knew all of those ups and downs and crazy situations I've been in would end up paying off in the end, because they really do benefit the clients I have now. And I can look back and say, oh, that's why that happened. So that's a little bit about me.
I mean, I think that Nicola and I always like to say, like, even though something bad might happen, you don't really know how it's going to work in the next day, in the next hour. And it could turn out to be one of the best things that's ever happened to you. Like, I like to look back at them and be like, oh, those are all the references, right? Like, okay, so I got fired from this job, which then led me to this, which then led me to that. And now I'm doing with something that I love. And, even though it feels so terrible at the time of getting fired, or you have to leave the job, or whatever the upheaval might be in that particular situation, it always does kind of end up working out, even if you can't see it right at that moment.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big proponent of that. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. So when we were vetting you, I was like, oh yeah, my first job out of college was also on Wall Street. Like, I was at S&P building, but that was like 2002. So there was a little bit of time in between us. So why don't you explain a little bit like what it was like working back then? Because in the 80s, that's when I grew up, and it was all about like women can have it all, like, Brooke Shields on the cover of Cosmo, like holding the baby in the power suit with the big shoulder pads, all of that. So what was that like actually living it?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Our podcast is powered by the seamless one-click installation and WordPress starter wizard from SiteGround. Choose from pro designs, add contact forms, online stores, portfolios, all automated, no tech stress. Say goodbye to mundane setups and hello to a stunning podcast platform. Join us on Let's Break Up Toxic Workplace Stories and let SiteGround handle the digital stage for you. Launch your podcast website effortlessly, because breaking up with toxicity starts here.
Oh my God, now I'm a living history project. It was really weird. I got there and thought, oh my God, thank goodness for all the women who came before me, so that I don't have to worry about any discrimination on Wall Street. Meanwhile, I got a list of things that I could and couldn't wear, such as no slingback shoes, no short sleeves above my elbow, because God
Wait,
forbid.
I'm still laughing that you actually thought, like, you're like, oh great, this is so modern. Like, that's so naive. I love it. Okay.
I'm so on
Thank God for
board.
all the women who used to wear paper, like burlap sacks to work. Now I can, yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. So you had a dress code.
Yeah, absolutely. And, God forbid, the sight of one of my colleagues being driven into a sexual frenzy by the sight of my elbow, because I'm wearing sleeves above my elbow. And I could wear dresses. I was at the one of our liberal places where I could wear dresses, but I had to wear a dress with a jacket. And there was this horizontal versus vertical rule. You could not wear a jacket if you went vertically, but if you went horizontally in the building, you had to wear a jacket. And it was very, very well laid out. And I will say they were tough on men too, because one of my male colleagues at this bank, and by the way, we had black rotary dial phones, had one day he was, because the bank was founded by Alexander Hamilton, and we used to call it Alacam High. But one of my colleagues was getting dressed. We all had our first paychecks, right? So we would go out drinking together every night. And one of my colleagues had a suit that went out drinking one night and went in to get a suit the next day, and he wound up with like his gray charcoal pinstripe jacket and his navy pinstripe pants. And by 10:30 that morning, he had been called into the training program director's office to say, we don't allow separates here, but we can give you a loan to purchase more clothes if you feel your wardrobe needs to be amplified. It was very serious. But it was, for women, it was, and I became a barrier breaker when I, in my training program, got the top score in the cash flow accounting exam. And in 1986, which was when the price of oil fell from $40 a barrel to $14 a barrel, and the chairman of my bank fired everyone in the oil, gas, and extractive industries division and said, oh, just get the person who got the top score in the cash flow accounting exam and put them in there. Well, no one thought it would be a girl. So I became the first girl in the oil, gas, and extractive industries division. And there was a big brouhaha because I had to have a modesty panel in my desk, and there were no desks with modesty panels. And so there was a banker's desk has two side panels with drawers, and then it just on top. But this had to have a modesty panel in front so that no one would see my legs when they walked by. And I later heard that the president of the bank had once been walking through the main banking floor and walked by and had been looking at someone's legs under the desk, I'm sure an admin, and smacked right into one of the main pillars on the main banking floor. And that was why there was such a big deal that I had to have a modesty panel. I mean, it was just like the most ridiculous thing. But anyway, I had a great time, and I actually got a 10-state territory on the West Coast. I had never been west of Pennsylvania. We had tiny little pieces of these huge loan agreements and these big oil companies, and the treasurers of companies like Arco and Unocal and Occidental Petroleum, who many of whom don't exist anymore, but they were big West Coast oil firms, had to sit with me for lunch once a quarter. And, this 23-year-old blonde girl, was like, oh, you want to buy a lockbox or do a registration in case you want to do a bond? And it was a blast. I loved it. And the others, and the toxic part was being the only woman was, there was a situation where, like the head of the division said to me at the Christmas party one night, I don't think you can do as good a job as a man could in the role that you have. And I kind of went, that's, what do I do with that exactly? And I kind of didn't do anything because I was getting to fly first class all over the country. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have said it. I would have just been like, yet here I am. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. It was
Yeah.
a different time, and I stayed there 5
Mhm.
years, and I got some good references to go to school. I learned a ton. I have a certificate in petroleum engineering from the University of Southwestern Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. And I flew in a Learjet I went to a gold mine. I learned to play blackjack in Winnemucca, Nevada, from the CFO of Pegasus Gold. I went to solvent extraction electro winning plant and for copper. I saw copper wire being made. It was all this, like, from a kid from New Jersey.
That's really cool. Yeah,
really
it's like cool
stuff.
shit.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
liked it. But
Yeah.
I also had some, actually, because I apologize for people who are listening, because you're not going to be able to see this, but in the start of my toxic workplace career, there were several things. I actually made you a bingo card of toxic workplaces. And this
Bingo card. I can't
Oh my God, I
even.
love this.
so you can choose what you like. I'm going to try there. So I
Here, we
have,
see it.
if you can't see it, down the side, I have 3 categories of potentially toxic relationships. There's boss,
Right.
peers, and subordinates. And then across the top, I have insecure, overly secure, and unethical. And in each of those boxes, I do have examples.
You do.
I do. So, well, just these are kind of random examples. So for the insecure boss, and actually this was my first boss at this bank, the quote I have in here is, "Your work sucks." So the insecure boss will kind of say, like, so when I got my first bonus at this bank job, it arrived with a conversation from my boss at the time, who said, well, we're giving you a very nice bonus this year and bump and raise because our work as a team, our work as a division, and the men that you report to have been doing so well. So you're benefiting from that, and not
right. But it's not really your work that's getting you the bonus. It's everybody else's. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, as an example. So, yeah. So this is for you guys. I made it just for you, so you can choose which toxic workplace story you would like. I'm happy to just read out the examples too.
Can I hear any of the unethical ones?
Same. I'm on board for
any of the unethical ones. Let's start.
I'm like unethically on board.
Okay. So for boss, unethical and doing unethical stuff. So it's actually I have a nonprofit example from there. I worked for a time for an organization that mostly worked with government grants, and was a fabulous organization that was running, that put it into low-income housing.
Okay.
So hesitant says the issue there was, the organization was so completely and tightly controlled by 2 people. And the board was specifically chosen to be unchallenging. So it was a little bit an organization without any checks or balances whatsoever.
Like none? Because I work for a not-for-profit right now, and I'm like, everything is scrutinized at this point. Like,
isn't your not-for-profit like government subsidized?
There's government subsidy, but it's a charity. Like, we make.
Yeah, but I think once government is involved, it's a little bit more checks and balances. Maybe not much. I don't know. What do you think, Amy?
The investing government money is highly successful, and beyond repute, beyond any kind of shadow of a doubt, successful in fulfilling the mission. Then the individuals can do,
who are, yeah,
can
right.
still create what becomes a personally extremely toxic, high turnover, and very controlling, because the individual is doing exceptionally good work that's beyond reproach. The individual then tends to also run rampant in terms of, I can do what I want, including getting community board members. Oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Community board members who are able to just do what I want.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Before we dive back into uncovering the complexities of toxic workplaces, we have an important request for you. If you find our discussions eye-opening and thought-provoking, consider subscribing to Let's Break Up Toxic Workplace Stories. Subscribing not only ensures you catch every episode, but also helps us reach a broader audience with our message of positivity and change. But that's not all. Leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform goes a long way in spreading awareness about the impact of toxic workplaces on individuals and the solutions we explore together.
Okay, so maybe I can help you out here. One of my very first jobs, like I've been working since I was probably like 14, right? Like part-time jobs, whatever. So my mom is like a big Catholic, like really big into like God and organized religion. I'm not, but there was this thing called neighborhood Bible study. It was a nationwide thing. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it would go by NBS. And my mom always volunteered there. She was like big into it. And so one summer I interned there, like, you know, I got paid whatever. And I did like, you know, admin stuff, secretarial stuff, packaging things, stuff like that, menial stuff. So it was a not-for-profit. It was very small. There was like 3 people there. The 2 main people who ran it were a man and a woman. They were husband and wife. Cut to like 7 years later, because there was no checks and balances, the husband and wife who ran it had embezzled all the money and it no longer exists. So I feel like that's kind of like, you know, it's kind of in the same vein of what you're talking about. Like it's a much smaller scenario, but it no longer exists. Like, and it was a big thing at the time. Like this was like in the early 90s, probably. They would like, you know, it was like every Wednesday was like neighborhood Bible study night, you know, across the nation or wherever it was. So
Not shocking for religion, huh?
No, I don't think, but I think it, regardless of religion, like nonprofits, I think you do have to be a little wary of, because there aren't always those checks and balances. Like who is checking the husband and wife who are running it?
Right. Here's an example I feel more comfortable with, and it's a consulting firm that no longer exists, but I was told by my boss, so I was, again, the only woman, because I had this experience in metals, and I had joined the steel department consulting agency of a global consulting firm. And we had a Latin American client who they were pretty sure was going to stop the flow of money into the organization. And they told me to run down the budget as much as I could by charging as much as I could, and suggested I do a study on what was a new technology that was being used at the time. And it gave me a deadline, gave me a project, and I went out and did it. And when I came back, I was told, I was not told this until I came back, was like, well, we're not actually going to give this to the client, but we wanted to spend down the budget as much as possible. Now, I was in a team, in a division, and I had a mentor who was, you know, running the overall company. Like, what do I do with that? Like, that felt horrible. And as an exec, and when I was a temp starting out, like AT&T headquarters was in the town where my mother was living, my adopted hometown at the time. And I got paid like $11 an hour. This was in 1982, which was a fortune.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, to shadow a secretary. And I spent a lot of my time reading books. reading novels, because every once in a while they give me something to type or photocopy, but like 6 hours out of an 8-hour day, I'd bring in a book because there was nothing for me to do. And it was just so wasteful. So, you see stuff like that, you're 22 versus, being in my 30s versus being in my 50s. And it just kind of makes you want to go, yikes.
So, but I kind of understand like the whole thing with the Latin American company, like from a business standpoint. I kind of can understand that. I think it is towing the line of what's ethical and what's unethical. But it's like, if you're reliant on that account and you think that something's up with that account, you want to scramble and get as much as you can while getting's good.
Yeah, as long as it's going to be valuable.
Well, and as long as it's above board. So, maybe they most likely knew something that you didn't know, like, maybe that obviously they pulled the project at the last minute, or they always knew they were going to pull the project. But the thing is what were your motives? Your motives were pure. You were doing what you were told to do. So it's like, you can't, and I don't think you are blaming yourself, but I think from a business standpoint, it's savvy, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily consider that completely unethical. I think it's a gray area.
Okay. See, I feel like if I was a client, I would be completely freaked out by that. If they're saying you need to do what we've been asking you to see, I think I was just given a red herring of a project to do that wasn't necessarily something they had been asked to do.
I think it's a gray area but the way you're saying it though, it's like you're getting rumors that this company that you're relying on, your partner or your client, is going to stop giving you money, right? So it's like you're almost like you're in between a rock and a hard place. So I don't know. I think maybe I'm not understanding it properly, but I don't necessarily think it's completely unethical, because I think if push came to shove, you could give the report to the client.
Yes, that's true. And it wound up being a really good piece of work that we sold to other clients, which adds another dimension. But yeah,
right. I'm
sure we gave it to them as well.
Yeah. Okay, so give us another example.
Well, from another, from here, the unethical. Yes. I'm sure you've seen this one. From the peers column, I'm taking your work. And from the subordinates, I'm presenting someone else's work to you. So both of those are, I've had that happen. I will tell you, just because before I go into examples of those, I will tell you kind of a funny one. I once got brought into a company that had recently gone from a smaller company to a much bigger company. They had made 2 acquisitions at the same time, and I was brought on a consultant to sort of do some evaluation as to, who's going to be, there are big company people and small company people, and like who's going to be able to make the transition to becoming a bigger company person. And one of the people that I recommended letting go was the head of HR. And she thought and screamed, and they, she was told, and she was actually escorted out. That was a policy at the time. And about 5 weeks go by, and I was still at the client, and all of a sudden you could hear the finance manager. And this person it was one of those women who was like always in perfect makeup and perfect hair. And, like HR people are sort of like, really bright. And she and her husband worked in IT at the same company, and or partner, and they had a condo in the Caribbean somewhere. And they talked about going there all the time, et cetera. They didn't have any kids. And about 5 weeks later, you could hear the finance manager all over the executive floor scream, "Oh my God, we've been paying for the condo in the Caribbean."
No.
And she
Wait a second. How did they find out?
An American, and she had, when she goes escorted out, she kept saying, "Let me just go back to my desk. And we were like, "Well, I'm sorry." I wasn't there, but
she probably wanted to cover her ass with the condo.
And the boyfriend was in IT, and he had helped cover up some of the some of the withdrawals.
Like the embezzlement to like.
Mm-hmm. So she, about a couple of days after she left, she got on a plane to Venezuela, and the boyfriend hadn't gotten on a plane to Venezuela yet, but he did, like, before he had gone to Venezuela before the Amex statement came in. So the company got extradition, and they're both in jail now here.
No, this is so good. Did the company sell the condo? Was the condo nice?
I do not know. I didn't stick around that far. I just heard from people that it was. I think it was very nice. And
it was probably gorgeous.
Yeah.
But like, also, what kind of jackass comes to work and like brags about their condo that they're embezzling? Like, what? Like, so I had a friend of mine who embezzled quite a bit of money, and she did her time and everything. And she was actually like, I'm glad that happened. She's a better person now. But when she was confronted with the embezzlement, she was like, yes, I did that. She just like copped to it. It's like
wait, isn't that the friend that went to the prisons?
Yeah, she did like 7 years in Rikers, or not 7, maybe 4.
Did she go to Club Fed?
No, Rikers is not federal. But isn't
Rikers the one that always makes it to the movies because it's a shit?
It's like it's not real. It's like, it's just like a regular prison. It's just because it's like New York City prison.
It's on an island off of New York.
This is unrelated. Totally unrelated.
And then I think eventually she probably was transferred to the Bedford Correctional Facility for women. But anyway.
But hold on, totally unrelated. I'm just curious to know, what are the prisons like in America? Like, do you have, like, is it bad?
I don't know. I've never been to prison. Amy, have you ever been to? Are you asking us? Like, we're like the whitest white people, like, in America. Like, I think the worst thing I ever did was carry my dog on the subway without like an approved carrier. And I got detained by NYPD once. That's the worst thing I've ever done.
I'm Catholic. You got me.
Oh yeah, come on, those Catholics.
We know you're getting into trouble. We need to get Jane on. But when that story broke, because it actually broke in like all the major New York papers, because the employer she embezzled from was kind of famous. I was like so pissed off. I was like, she should have made shell companies. Like she should have hidden it better. Like I was like, no, she could have kept the con going longer. Like, but I love that the HR. So what made you want, like, when you were in there to restructure, not knowing that she was embezzling and the company was paying for the condo, what were like kind of the red flags that you were like, she's not going to be able to make it?
She just didn't really do any work. I mean, it was a scientific company, and the scientists were all kind of out of control. They were all kind of doing their own thing. They weren't really setting up appropriate budgets. They were scientists are really difficult to manage. They all, what's the expression? They're smart. Nobody wants to do, how lawyers have to, unless you're doing some really cool aspect of law, you have to do the same thing again and again and again. It's kind of the same thing when you're doing pharmaceutical, preliminary pharmaceutical research. Like, you're trying to identify what research has been done on this in the past, and what's been, what have they learned, and if there's any ways to improve on it, and what the indications are, blah, blah, blah. Everybody wanted to take, an ordinary problem and turn it into a huge, unique situation. So, something that they're all billed by pharmaceutical companies. So our pharmaceutical company would outsource a particular research project at maybe $100,000, and these scientists would turn it into like a $500,000 project. So like a lot of money would get wasted because the hourlies weren't being tracked, and there was no system set up, and there was no sort of performance reviews set in place. So that like the structure of what they needed to, for managing 15 scientists, yeah, you could do it because it was one-on-one, but you needed the processes and you needed the documentation when you were moving to 100 scientists. So that's what I mean by somebody who's a small company person versus a big company person, is somebody who kind of operates on instinct versus somebody who kind of operates with processes.
Okay. All right.
And that's also the issue on somebody who's very controlling over everything from, a board to an organization, as like sort of running it on their gut without any checks and balances, as opposed to being able to run it through a structure and a process and written documents and guidelines. And that's a gray line of unethical. It's not a black and white line, as long as the company's doing well and according to its mission. So it's a little tangent.
No, I think that's good.
But when I was at the bank, again, that bank was so hilarious. I mean, they told you not to lend money to men with pinky rings.
Wait, why?
Because they tended to be, a lot of mobsters in that day wore pinky rings, or, they said, you heard stories like, the middle market people would, lend money to somebody who had a fur vault. And there was somebody who, went to visit this fur vault and did the due diligence on 7th Avenue and like counted all the furs. And, they really liked the people. And then one day the officer was walking down 7th Avenue with his wife and said, "Oh, let me just go introduce you to these company that I'm financing. They have furs. You'll like the showroom. It's really cool." Went up the stairs, knocked on the door, completely empty. So it was like a total scam to try to get this money, but the furs were all rented and it was a total scam. I mean, you heard all these stories about, fake ways to get money out of, or lines of credit out of bankers. So you sort of heard all these crazy stories about what people did to try to get money. So
what's the craziest one that you were like a party to, not that you were involved in, but that you knew about or that you uncovered besides the condo?
That was probably the craziest. The other one, this is more illustrative of how companies, I always try to tell my clients, because they'll say, "Oh, I haven't heard from a company in a week," or "I got my offer letter, but I haven't gotten anything else." I'm like, most companies are just kind of bumping along, and they're not really run like clockwork. I don't care how good maybe some companies like a Goldman Sachs or a really, really, really top level company is really run well, but most companies are just kind of bumping along. One of the funniest stories I've heard is about my former bank, which is one of the few banks that is still in existence today. When there was 100 commercial banks and there must have been 30 commercial banks and commercial bank training programs, like Chemical Bank, Manufacturers Hanover, all of these banks that existed in the 80s that are no longer there. My bank, the Bank of New York, still exists. And the reason why it still exists is it has this huge securities processing clearing center, which means that, when you make a deposit, before it actually goes to your bank, it'll clear it through, the check has to clear through its securities processing system, which will usually mean the Bank of New York takes a few cents, et cetera. One of the funniest things I've ever heard was and back in those days, bank operations or back office stuff wasn't where the best and the brightest went. Well, there was somebody who was the best and the brightest who realized that there was a lot of money to be made there. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was sort of like the darling of the company, et cetera, et cetera. So they made a lot of investment in that, and they're still existing today. Someone told me that the reason why initially that investment was made and was so profitable is that for 4 or 5 years, someone was coding the expenses from that check clearing operation and overall clearing center to the wrong expense center. So the coding in the general ledger system was not going to the check clearing and processing center. It was going somewhere else. So the operation looked like it was 90% profitable, whereas in reality, it was like 20%. but someone was putting the costs in the wrong cost center.
That sounds exactly like the company we came from. Like they didn't know the difference between revenue and profit. So they were like, we're doing great. Our revenue is like X amount. And I'm like, that doesn't mean shit. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That's the executives numbers. And they're like, is we're going to build a new building. We're going to build a new center.
That's so much money. And then it's like, just kidding. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So that may be an urban myth, but that's like kind of typical of how a lot of companies just like stuff like that they don't catch. It's kind of amazing.
But
again,
I think
how
it's
many companies
like,
just kind of bump along.
The thing though is like so like companies are made up of individuals, and individuals are therefore human, and then we're therefore prone to error, right? So
Absolutely.
Nothing is ever run 100% correctly 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So like, and I think as a client or a consumer or a customer, we want companies to run 100% correctly 100% of the time. So there's like this dichotomy, right? Like when we're the worker, we're like, well, of course we're going to make mistakes. We're human. But when we're on the other side, we're like, this company should have its shit together. So it's like, how do we bridge that gap? And like, is it processes like what you're talking about? Is it, we've talked with other experts and they say it's more empathy. It's more getting to know people on a human level. Is it placing people in the right positions? What do you think is the next step there?
Empathy definitely is trending right now, and I would hope that happens. If we can all be trained to be empathetic, the world's going to change a lot. I think that these things have to be institutionalized. And I do think they're all going to be, we're all individuals. And I don't think that institutionalized isn't the right word, but I don't think you can force people to be empathetic. What I do think you can do is incentivize people to be empathetic by making it part of their goals. And what's the outcome of that is to keep people. So right now, I think we've been through a period where everything in the way we work has changed. I mean, I entered the workforce in 1985. You did in 2002. I mean, for both of us, everything about the way we work has changed, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Communicate, manufacture, distribute, from you name it, it's changed dramatically. And everyone who's in business has spent all their time, and all the literature has been about just trying to stop from becoming extinct, right? So, but nothing has been done to keep people focused on managing people. And I think that's really come home to roost with all of the big 4 R's, right? The Great Resignation, the Great Regret. And I think that is huge. That may be an inflection point for the fact that we have not paid any attention to managing people. And I know a big root cause of it, that anecdotally that I hear, but it lines up with all the evidence, is so many times when someone is leaving an organization, managers and executives will say, well, let's not replace them. Let's try to give their jobs to someone that's staying. And then suddenly the people who are left get a responsibility of another full-time employee, but they don't get any more money and they don't get another title. And
what is that called, Nicola? Quiet hiring. Yeah, because
I do not need that in my life today. Thank you very much.
Somebody else was like, I forget who it was, but somebody had to explain it to me, because I was like, somebody had to explain quiet quitting to me, because I thought like, and I think it's apparent that I am a smart individual, but I thought it really meant like you just left and you never came back. Because I was like, that's how I'd quiet quit. I just like do an Irish goodbye and just never ghost someone. So because that wasn't anything that existed when I was working in corporate America, just like it didn't exist when you were working in corporate America.
Well, there wasn't a name for it.
No,
but sure did it.
Yeah.
It was called phoning it in, or something else before that. But Yeah.
Well, it was just called quitting. You just just didn't go to work. You stopped going to work.
Yeah. Or it was called dead wood. Even for that. Yeah.
But so that's what I thought quiet quitting was. But so then somebody educated us all on the quiet hiring, the quiet quitting, and the quiet firing, which I still don't understand how to quiet fire, but maybe eventually.
We used to call that the aloha room. So yeah, you just stop giving people stuff to do and wait for them to leave.
You or phase them out.
Yeah.
You I mean,
oh my God, isn't that what we do with boyfriends?
That's what I do with guys I don't like.
Yeah, I phase them out.
I once was afraid to pick up my phone for 2 weeks because I was afraid it was going to be this guy that I didn't want to talk to. And all my friends
was it work or was it personal related?
With you? No, I still had to talk to him and 4 times and be like, oh, I can't. Oh, I can't. Oh,
but was it for work related stuff or were you dating?
No, it was at home. It was at home.
I love
it was a work
so much.
No, because I was like, sometimes if a client's calling me and I see who it is and I don't want to talk to them, I'll just not answer and then I'll email them back and be like, I'm in a meeting, and meanwhile I'm watching TV on the couch with my daughter or whatever. I'll be and I'll be like, what do you need? I'm so sorry, I'm in back-to-back meetings all day. But yeah,
it's a stinker, guys.
Yeah
We're bad.
Okay, so
go ahead. Well, I was going to say, so management has been something that's just been not valued, and one way to say that, and that's what's caused all of this craziness, much exacerbated by COVID and everybody leaving their jobs, not wanting to work their jobs, not putting any effort into their jobs, and empathy is definitely, I agree with people who say the future of management and the future of business is about being more empathetic. And I'm also so sick of all these people who are talking about culture being sending people giving people the opportunity to have Zoom beers with their boss on Friday at 5:00.
Who the hell would ever want to do that?
And sending people snack boxes with the company logo, that's not company culture.
Is this the toxic positivity that we're hitting? Are we hitting straight into a segue for toxic positivity right now?
We can, if you like.
That's
please, Nicola. That's Nicola's baby. Go for it, Amy. Go for toxic positivity. Let me just preface this. If any company would like to send me a company branded charcuterie board, I will gladly accept it. I will eat it on Zoom. I will shout the company out, but I don't want to work for your company. I just want the free charcuterie board. So if anyone wants to provide that,
I need a charcuterie board too. Hey, you're the only one that gets charcuterie boards.
No, I'm saying, I had the idea first. So, first come, first serve. Anyway, so while I understand, Amy, you're saying I'm just saying, hey, if someone wants to give me free, a whole bushel of peanut M&Ms and some pepperoni and a couple crackers, I'm here for it. But not as part of
stay working there.
No, not because
hey, you're the best. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, I can't do that for you though. But you'll do a great job. I can't help you with that question, but you'll do a great job.
Yeah. But and here's your tub of peanut M&Ms. Yeah, so I think that's the part that Nicola really becomes alive at with the toxic positivity. So why don't you take it away, Amy, with what you're seeing with toxic positivity?
Yeah, that's new. Now that's insightful. All of this other stuff is kind of recycled.
It's just rebranded. It's been there. It's just been rebranded.
Rebranded. Toxic positivity, that is insightful and new because that's stuff that's been used to make people feel inadequate, to put up blocks against people being managed or invested in. And that is things that prey on, that prevent teams. I'm a bottom line person, right? So that is things that take away from the bottom line. So there's a book by Amy Edmondson called The Power of Psychological Safety in Teams. And it doesn't speak directly to this, I don't recall, but she does, there's all this evidence out that says, yes, diversity in teams does make teams better and more innovative, and all that translates into better profitability. Now you're speaking a language that people will listen to. Yes, having teams where people feel psychologically safe to make mistakes, to speak up when things aren't necessarily going to be all the times positive or all the times in line with what other people think, that is going to be better, and that's going to be drive more innovation, and that translates into the bottom line, which is a language that people will listen to. If you just say empathy, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's this year's new trend toward
buzzword, yeah.
But or that's what HR is pushing. But I'm driving the bottom line, and I know I'm not. What does it do for me? If you talk about it in a framework that has evidence that supports it's going to my bottom line, then I'm going to listen, and that's here. So connecting toxic positivity to negatively impacting teams because your people don't feel safe, connecting DEI to negative profits because teams who are not diverse don't provide you with diverse thoughts when you're serving a diverse client base, and linking toxic positivity to something that is not as innovative or strong as you would get if you had a safe psychological workspace. So yes, we are getting somewhere, and that toxic positivity linked to psychological safety in teams and how it can improve your bottom line is insightful, and I love that. So you're not just glomming onto this because it's something that you've experienced, and it's I love that you're glomming onto this, not just because it's something that bugs you, but it is something that can be really powerful if we can get it talked about in the right way and get it across in the right way.
Yeah. And
so
I think that's the
I took all the wind out of your sails by talking about money. You're like, yeah, no,
but how does toxic positivity we know that it affects people's, productivity. We know that, but I sometimes what toxic positivity examples have you experienced? Because I think sometimes, we kind of can get in the weeds with talking about these big heady concepts.
Yes, that's where I went.
And you happen to be exceptionally intelligent. So for the kids in the back, like myself, what are some actual examples that you personally have experienced that left you kind of like scratching your head and being like, because like toxic positivity to me can kind of come off as quite confusing because you're like, wait, they're being nice, but are they? Or like, it's sort of like this subtle dance that happens that I can't participate in. I've learned that about myself. I'm not built that way. I'm too direct. I have too much masculine energy. It doesn't work for me.
Right.
But for other people, like give us your experience with it and how it affected you.
Okay. So I think the most subtle one is being having your ideas sidelined. So if everyone's saying, let's brainstorm, which by the way has been proven not to be particularly effective, everybody in a room throws up ideas. And if yours is not given, let's say you have a really good idea, but everyone's putting up stickies and you were not able to articulate it particularly well on a sticky. And people are sorting them out, they're putting them into different things. They just say, oh, this is a good idea. And they put it sort of randomly under a other column, or don't really fully understand it. And they're not able to say, oh, I get this is just a rehash of item B, instead of saying, oh, this is really good too, without fully understanding it. So there's an analogy where somebody has an idea where it's not an alignment, it's not something that fits with the general crowd, and you have someone who doesn't feel psychologically safe to say, that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, this is a little bit different, because they know that everyone's going to look at them and go, what? That would put us in a whole different direction. And you want to say, yeah, but you're sort of getting pulled along like salmon upstream to go in this one direction, and you're missing out on an opportunity to think about somebody who thinks a little differently. So that's a something that in the workplace, you're everybody, it's a group thing. So that's toxic positivity as a group thing. I'm going to go back to my little bingo chart here, because if you're thinking about, let's look at, so if you have an overly secure peer in here, and my example is I'm going to freeze you out. So let's think, I can think of many times where people have kind of, there's either been unspoken rules that I didn't know about, that people didn't necessarily want to tell me about, where they'll just say, oh yeah, we're going to have you work with this person. They're great. And I get in a group with them and they're like, I'm like, this person sucks. And, but
I think that's like, yeah. I love that example because I think everyone could relate to that. It's like you hear like all these accolades about someone, they're so smart, they know what they're doing. And then like, this has happened to me many times. I'm like, how did this person get in this position? Like, is it just
this person
me?
have this job right now?
Yeah. Like, is it me? Am I the dumb one? Am I not understanding something? Like, it really makes you feel isolated. But, yeah. And then, I mean, I work with a lot of people who I'm like, how are you still in this same job and haven't gotten fired? Yeah.
And it's either sometimes it's something as simple as, oh, nobody told you that person is best friends with, went to college with our chief operating officer.
Right.
Or it's, I've always loved working with them. And, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Or it's, it's something like, oh, they had, some horrible disease, or their kid has some horrible disease. And it's like, okay, I'll just do all the work.
We're just ticking all the things off this bloody bingo board, Gina.
Yeah. That's my goal.
Well, but that's the thing. Like, where Nicola and I met, it was like all of the above. Like, they were either related, like they were either all from the same family, or brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or cousin-in-law, or they all were from the same church group from the Midwest. And it's like, it created this thing where it was like
someone's got like a debilitating
mental health
thing
issue
happening, or
every other month it was like someone had like something going on. I was the only one, I feel like I was the only one who never was sick, and I was like, oh, I got a cold this weekend, but I feel better now. And that was it. I was like, I slept through it. Thank God for my nanny. Oh no, but this is the one thing that I love to harp on, and Nicola's probably sick of me hearing me saying it. But
please do share
the Thankful Thursdays.
Oh my God.
That we had. So this is like the best example of toxic positivity, I feel like, because it's so like simple and clear cut. So on Slack, in the company Slack where Nicola and I met, on Thursdays, you would like put in this the Slack channel, like something you're grateful for. So most people would be like, I'm so grateful I get to work for a company where my best friends and neighbors are working too. Or I'm so grateful that I can work outside and I can work from home. And it's like all like the people who are cronies, they're all like hearting each other's things. And then like me or Nicola would be like, I'm really grateful for my resilience as a single mom. And it's like crickets. I don't think either one of us ever said that, but we would say something.
Oh, like, no, I've got one that I've got an example. I went to the dump, like the landfill.
To like throw shit out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so a little bit of context. I videoed the trip because I was going to put it to my Instagram page, right? So I put it at high speed and videoed the trip, because what's interesting about our this is a total weird segue, but anyway.
I'm like, why are we talking about garbage?
I want to hear
it. So our dump is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It does not look like a dump because they cover it with grass, so it's a mountain. Like, it looks like a beautiful valley and a beautiful mountain, but dig 2 meters in and you're like,
And you're like,
dump,
okay,
right?
dirty diapers. Yeah.
Yeah, you got dirty diapers, but they've made it in such a way that we harvest the methane. Like, it's really a beautiful place to go. And it's beautiful to go for walks. It's got a bit of a stench, obvs. It's a beautiful...
It has a bit of a decaying stench, but
stench. It's got smell. But it's not as bad as like a dump, right? So I videoed it and I shared it to the Thankful Thursday. And I was like, I'm really thankful that I live in New Zealand, where they have taken the time to effectively manage their environmental management, essentially, because look at how beautiful this dump is.
Crickets.
And I'm like, rah, 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 rah.
It was like crickets.
And I'm like, oh my Lord. I'm
like,
guys,
so
look at this place. It's beautiful.
So, well, that's kind of like, I've had a friend who said, yeah, I really love working with a company that talks about having Christian values. And I'm like, yeah, because you're Christian, and
right.
Everybody's really nice, and everybody's, like, knows each other's families. And I'm like, yeah, but that's nice for you, because
but it wouldn't be nice for like an outsider.
I still have the video.
Right.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Like, yes, please share.
You can share in the. I'll give you my bingo, and you can put it in the notes.
Also, I just want to let you know that as a child growing up in like the 70s, the late 70s and early 80s, my dad used to take me to the town dump out. So we had a second house out in the Hamptons before it became like chic, and we would, like, on the weekends we would go there, and we would literally have fun, like, poking around, not like the garbage, but like, like the household items. Like, there were separate areas for where you would dump things, and like you'd come home with like little treasures. Like, you could find like a doll's like crib or something for your doll, like someone threw out, and that was some of like the best summer memories I've had, like, as a little kid with my dad, so it's like, not all dumps are bad. If I had been working at that company, Nicola, at the time that you posted that, I would have been like, I'm a fan of dumps.
Yeah the town of Wellesley.
I've just emailed it to you. I've just emailed it to the both of you, and I'm very curious to see what you think.
Okay
yeah. Okay, so tell us what you're doing now, Amy. Tell us what. So we know you like to match people, like, especially newly graduated.
Oh my God, is this like Tinder for work?
Ooh, could you start a Tinder for work? Start an app, Amy.
Oh my God, we've just
TM.
Oh my God. Like, you swipe left and right, you choose the employer's got to put their thing down, and then if it's a match,
you get an interview.
That would be cool.
But
oh my God, that would be so fun. Have we just made you $1 million? Like, is this what's just happened?
I mean,
okay, hold on. Copyright, Gina and Nicola. Just
copyright.
Yeah.
How have people not done that? I would be so keen.
There's too many like nuances, and I think that's where Amy comes in, right? Like, like when I was trying to get a consulting gig, it's like I have such good experience, but I wasn't always getting interviews because I think I wasn't using the right words for the algorithm that the HR, like, there's so many other factors that go into it that I wouldn't have known if I didn't hire someone outside to kind of help me. How did you
find the job with our toxic workplace? Because we got told
I interviewed with someone else who knew them, and they said, you're too advanced and experienced for our company, but maybe you could work for this company,
this crappy company.
Yeah, exactly. So explain what you're doing and how it affects people, now in a good way.
So what I do, in a lot of ways, what I tell people I do is I sell confidence. So part of what I do is explain how on the other side, people should not take what they're getting from companies seriously. So, or personally, they should take it seriously. I tell everybody that if I was the CEO of every company that they applied to, if they had time, would reach out personally and say, thank you for applying to my company, because it's part of their job to make it an attractive place to work. Yeah. And that's something that especially new grads do not get, and people in career transition do not forget. And you don't, the thing about, this isn't necessarily toxic, but the thing that happens with a resume or any kind of application that comes in is, it gets printed out and it slides behind your desk, or, the person in HR realizes that the candidate went to college with the person on the trading floor that they have a crush on. So they're like, oh, before I pass this on, I'm going to send it up to Jamie and see if he'll notice me and send it back. I mean, you never know how stuff happens. I mean, stuff as ridiculous as that can happen with your resume getting no attention, or it gets put into a pile. I have a candidate who works at Pixar who applied in October, heard nothing until the first week in May. And by the third week in May, he had moved to San Francisco and was working for Pixar. I mean, this stuff is so bizarre, you don't know. At any rate, the value that I add is, I really think that most people don't realize is that when they're presenting themselves, so Gina, when you're presenting yourself and your value, for example, if you were on Upwork or if you were sending over your resume, you're presenting the value that you have. The next step, and the step that most people miss, is to present the value that you add to that company, to that role. So let me say, for example, if there was 100 jobs out there for you and that exactly met your profile, and all these companies were coming, and you got 20 resumes, 20 companies a day sending applications to you saying, please take my job. 18 of them said, here's why, we're a great company because of A, B, and C. And there was 2 that said, we're a great company for you, Gina, because we have these resources for working moms. And we specifically value, your specific skills. And we offer you these 3 benefits that we know are important to you. Aren't those aren't those 2 company letters going to go right to the top of your pile? So what I help people do is present themselves uniquely in a way that says, this isn't just how I add value, but this is how I can add value for you. And that follows through all the way through sending a cover letter, through asking for references. And it's
why do cover letters still exist though? Like, I feel like they're so outdated.
Again, I'm recruiting right now, and I would say that one of the key things I'm looking for is summarize your stuff for me in the cover letter, because the CV just tells you what the shit you've done. Like, great, but I want to know what's connected you to this job. Why are you connected? Why are you wanting to come and work with us today with the skills that you have? Summarize that shit up and just say, hey, so the one person that I'm interviewing, something that really stuck out to me was their connection to the organization itself. So we do, I'm trying to summarize that in a way that does not highlight essentially who they are. And I've mentioned them before, but essentially it's an organization that deals with maternal health and children. So tell me about why you want to connect with this, because the work that we do is so specialized and so it's such a gift that we give to the community, and it's such a beautiful program. Why are you connected? Because it's hard to, it's hard to say, oh, I'm just kind of there for the job. It's like, no, you've got to be connected, and I want to see that in your cover letter. Tell me.
But I think that's what Amy's saying, whereas I'm saying, I don't give a shit about the cover letter, because most cover letters are like, I really want to come work for you because I think I'm smart and I'll do a good job. Like, there's a difference. And I think that's what Amy's added value would be. She would tailor it so that it would be like, okay, well, why do you want to come work for us? Well, we're adults. We need money to survive. So that's, that's kind of a dumb question. But why am I a good fit? Right. And I think that's really the added value, at least what I'm understanding you're saying, Amy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the most important question in any interview is, why do you want this job? Because in my experience, in my many years of hiring, it was always the same story. It was, we'd bring in, 7 or 8 candidates first round, 4 or 5 candidates second round, 2 or 3 candidates last round. And I'd bring in my team and say, okay, you guys, what do you think? Who should we hire? And everybody would go, they're all kind of the same, but this one wants it the most. And the job would always go to the person who wants it the most. And of all of the validation I get on my methodology, and the thanks that I get from clients that get jobs, the most commented on is that one, because when they get the job and they're in it a few weeks, people say, wow, you got this job because you were the one that wanted it the most. And it's because it's not rocket science. It's, if you want it the most, you're going to be the one that works the hardest at getting it, at keeping it, and at doing a good job. So my whole methodology, every part of it breaks down into 3 pieces. You need to prove that you understand what the job is, because who wants to hire someone who's going to be like, ugh, I'm not doing this. This is not what I signed up for. I didn't get it when I applied, and go in 2 weeks. The second is that you can do the job. That's the standard one based on the skills that you have. And the third is that you want it. And that starts with the cover letter, in my opinion, which is, I template everybody's cover letters so that the first paragraph is very brief. Why do you want this job? Explain to me, how this job fits your skills and that you understand what you would be doing. The third is kind of a restatement in bullet form, so you have a little more creativity of, what your skills are. And then the bottom is, why do you want this company? Basically, in the first paragraph, you take keywords from the job description, because that's what an ocular reader is going to be looking for. And in the last one, you just take something from, because you don't want to do too much research until you're going to get an interview. You just take something from the website that they're proud of. Say, I love that your company has this commitment to social responsibility, or you're opening markets up in Asia, and I speak a little bit of Chinese, whatever it is that they're proud of, mention a case study, a white paper, and mention it. So, they know you've done your research, and that, you want to work for them. You're not just looking for work.
Yeah.
That also takes case of, just sending a resume, I think, is just pushing a button, right? So if you're just sending a resume, I call it spraying and praying. So there's no effort put into it, and there's nothing to say. You're not just like taking everybody. And companies are like people. They want to feel special. They want to know you took a little time to, if you get past the first screen, they want to know a little, that you spent a little time thinking about them.
I agree with
right. Well, where can people find you?
Companies are like people. I sort of can't believe I said that, but yeah, it's the same psychology. You get it.
Well, companies are like people because they're made up of individuals who are humans.
Yeah, that's true.
So where can people find you if they want help or to read your book, or give us all the good stuff? Yeah,
I'm at jobcoachamy.com, and I am on Facebook and Instagram at jobcoachamy.com. TikTok is jobcoachamy_, and Twitter is jobcoachamy_F. And my book is available everywhere, and both in Kindle format on Amazon and written. It makes a great gift for anyone who's graduating this year. And there's also a lot of information in there that's good for people at any career stage. And I have some online courses that are going to be put up soon too, as well as some specific aspects of things like I think references is coming online. And references used to be kind of a rubber stamp, and they are not anywhere anymore. They're a really good way to distinguish yourself as an exceptional candidate. So that's one of the first things I'm going to be putting up.
That sounds awesome.
I love that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys.
I wish that was there when I was trying to get a job, although I was recruited right out of college, so that was not so bad.
Yeah, you were one of stinkers I wished I could have been and wasn't, but gave me a life purpose, so that's good.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. And we really loved speaking to you.
Yes.
Oh, me too. Yeah, it was really fun, you guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Let's Break Up, Toxic Workplace Stories. If you enjoyed our candid conversations and insights, don't forget to hit that like button, follow us on social media, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform.